again. Today we'll tackle one of the most iconic jazz piano voicings, the spread voicing. These are usually 5-note open structures containing a root in which the guide tones are split between the hands. Because the way the notes are spread out, spread voicings often contain larger intervals between the voices. This leads to a rich and colorful jazz piano voicing, which works great when playing solo or when comping in a group. Let's go to the piano. Spread voicings can be created in 2 ways. First, by dropping the second voice of an A or B position chord down an octave and playing it over a root. Below is the 2 5-1s from Chapter 3B, Figure 4, and they're illustrated as spread voicings. So if we take a look at the first one, G minor 9, okay, that was in Chapter 3B. That was originally this voicing in A position, G minor 9. To make it a spread voicing, I'm actually dropping that second voice from the top down an octave here, and then I'm playing it with my left hand to create a 1-in-7 shell, and I'm left with this. Okay, C13 is like this in Figure 1. This was originally a B position chord in Figure 4 in Chapter 3B. And all I did was I dropped the second voice from the top down an octave to create this 1-in-3 shell and this spread voicing. And then I'm resolving it to an F major 13. So that's a little different than Figure 4 in Chapter 3B. Instead of F major 9, I'm using F major 13. The stack of fourths in the right hand makes for a more evenly spread voicing and creates a richer sound. So what I would suggest doing is read through Figure 1, right? That's altered dominant. And then maybe isolate measure 1 and measure 2, right? And transpose that. As I move down the piano, that's a little bit too muddy, okay? So what's making it muddy? Well, I'm going to say the left hand shell is becoming too muddy. So if I look at my left hand, my left thumb, keep your left thumb above the C below middle C, okay? So the range of the left thumb should be, let's see, that should be the lowest range for the left hand thumb. I can go up even there. As I go higher, it gets a little bit thin. So in general, I'm going to keep my left thumb between middle C, or maybe a few notes above middle C, but basically around middle C and the C below middle C. So just keep, and it doesn't matter if it's a 1-7 shell or a 1-3 shell, that would be a good indicator of range. The second way to build a spread voicing is to build it from the bottom up. Okay, on page 116, the bottom of the page, there's a table. The table shows chord tone categories from Chapter 3B. These are the same chord tone categories, but this time arranged in a way that would help you create a spread voicing. So the basic configuration would be on top of a root, add 1 note from each chord tone category in the following configurations from bottom to top, either 3-7 root 5 or 7-3-5 root. And the chord type will limit the choices. So experiment choosing various combinations of chord tones and subs to create 5-note spread voicings for different chord types. So just looking at that table real quick, if I want to build a C major 9 chord, I would have a root as the lowest note, then on top of the root I'd have a third, in this case a major third, and on top of the third I would have something from the 7th category, in this case a major 7, And then something from the root category. I don't want a root because I don't want to double the root right there. So it would be, well, the only choices here, the only choice would be a 9, really, in this case. I can't have a sharp 9 or a flat 9. And I can only have that 7 if one of the guide tones is a 6. So 9 is the only choice. And then on top of the root category, I have a 5 category on top. And there I have a little bit of room for interesting things. I could have sharp 11, I could have the 5, probably not the flat 13 or sharp 5, it wouldn't be normal. Certainly a regular 13 would be fine. So figure 2, page 117, I sort of illustrate a lot of these possibilities. The root and the guide tones for each chord are shown as whole notes and half notes and make up the bottom 3 notes of each voicing. The tensions and fifths are reserved for the soprano and alto voices and are written as quarter notes. Be careful to avoid minor ninths, except in the case of a 7 flat 9. Careful of doubling notes unless it's between the melody and the root, and careful of using more than one note from each category for the upper 4 notes. The one exception to this is if one of the guide tones is a 6, the 7 can be part of the root category and have the effect of being a tension note. Okay, let's start with tonic major. If you look at the whole notes and the half notes, measure 1, figure 2, we can start with a C6. 3 and 6 are the guide tones. The alto voice could be a D or a B. The B in this case is the 7th, but it's allowed because one of the guide tones is a 6. So those are the 2 choices for alto. Soprano could be 5 or sharp 11. It cannot be 13 because we're already playing the 6 as one of the guide tones. So it could be those 2 choices. And you can mix and match. You can mix and match. Now, what if it was C major 7? In that case, guide tone changes to a 7. The alto voice would have to be just a 9. The D would be the only choice here. Okay, we can't use the B anymore. Now, soprano could be a 5. It could be a sharp 11. It could also be a 13. Now, measure 2, C6, 6 and 3 guide tones. Alto could be a 5. Alto could be a sharp 11. Okay, we already have a 6 in one of the guide tones, so that 13 is not going to work. Now, the soprano could be a root because it's okay to double the melody can double the root, or it could be a 9, or it could actually be a 7 because one of the guide tones is a 6. So I can mix and match. And then finally, let's do C major 7. Guide tone is 7 and 3. So the alto could be a 5, could be sharp 11, and in this case, it could be a 13. So 3 choices. Now the soprano voice cannot be for what we're doing right now. Can't do this because this would cause a minor ninth to happen. So that's not available to us. So we could have a 9. We can't have a 7 either because we're already using a 7 as one of the guide tones. So really, it's got to be the 9. So that's sort of our choices here for major 7. Could be that or could be that. Same thing for tonic minor. Same idea. Okay, here I could experiment with that 7 as a tension. I could also have the 11, the regular 11 sounds good. Moving on to minor major. I could even do that technically, yeah. Okay, measure 4 here, we got 1, 6, flat 3 shell. On top of that, my alto voice could be a 5, or it could be an 11. Soprano could be root, 9, or 7. And then mix and match. Right? And then minor major, major 7, flat 3. The choices are a little bit different. Let's see, alto could be 5 or 11. Okay, it could actually be a 13 as well. Okay, and then on top, something from the root category. Let's see, in this case it can't be the root because I'm avoiding those minor ninths. So it's got to be a 9, and it can't be a 7 because I'm already using the 7 as one of the guide tones. So yeah, so some choices there. Now, choices for minor 7. There's not that many choices here because you're kind of locked in here. The alto voice has to be a 9. It can't be sharp 9 or flat 9 for a minor 7, and it can't really be the root because that would just be doubling the root an octave down. So it's got to be a 9, and that's why spread voicings are relatively limited, you know. So, but it's okay to talk about it. On top, we could have a 5 or an 11. Those are the common choices. Now, for the next measure, we have 1, 7, 3, and the alto could be a 5 or 11. In this case, I could indeed have a root or a 9, mix and match, right? Mix and match. Okay, dominant 7th, here's the gold mine. Here's where you have a lot of choices, okay? If we just look here, guide tones being the 3rd and the 7th. For the alto, I could have anything like a 9, flat 9, sharp 9. And then I can mix and match with all these soprano voice choices. 5, sharp 11, flat 13, regular 13, mix and match. You get the idea, right? So I can mix and match any of those quarter notes for the alto and the soprano on top of my guide tones. Same thing for the next measure. I could keep it plain, or I could start substituting tensions. Sharp 11, sharp 5 or flat 13, 13. Change the root to a flat 9, regular 9, sharp 9, mix and match. Minor 7, flat 5, again, it's relatively limited. You gotta have a 9, and then you could have a flat 5, and I suppose you could have an 11, although you wouldn't be playing the flat 5, so you're just implying minor 7, flat 5. It's not the perfect voicing. Same thing here. Soprano could be root or 9. Alto could be a flat 5 or an 11. Diminished 7th, so like minor 7, flat 5 for spread voicings is a little bit limited, so you're better off going with an upper structure triad voicing for that. Now, diminished 7th, there are some cool opportunities here. Those are my guide tones. I got flat 3, diminished 7th or 6th, so therefore the 7 now becomes a tension I can use for the alto voice. Okay, I could have 7 or I could have 9. That's pretty much it. On top of that, flat 5, 11, flat 13, mix and match. And then finally, here in measure 12, guide tones are here, 6, flat 3, so the alto could be, and I can mix that with those soprano voices. So, of course, to make it a diminished 7th, you should have a flat 5 in there somewhere, but sometimes you can just imply that. Mix and matching the top 2 notes that are written as quarter notes. Before going on, let's apply these voicings to Sweet Pumpkin from Chapter 3B. Play along with the track, this time using spread voicings. You may have been told when playing with a bass player, never play the root. Well, many piano players, from Hank Jones, Tommy Flanagan, and Barry Harris, to Bill Evans and Mulgrew Miller, played the root while comping with the band. Perhaps not all the time. Hank Jones might have done it more than Bill Evans, for example. But in general, as long as you aren't playing with an extremely heavy left pinky, it can be quite effective. You can think of it as just another color in your palette, Many times you can play spread voicings and simply omit the root when playing with the band. You end up with a drop 2 voicing, which we'll discuss in a later video. When playing Sweet Pumpkin, use the chord symbols as a guide. You may have to add an additional tension to complete your voicing. In measure 15, I've decided to play an upper structure voicing, upper structure triad voicing, since adding the 9th obscures the melody of the song. Also, the quarter note triplets in measure 17 sound better if you use guide tone voicings with doubled notes. Other than those 2 spots, spread voicings work fine. It is relatively common to have a doubled 3rd or 7th in the soprano voice when voicing 5-note rooted chords. Technically, this isn't a complete spread voicing since the top 4 notes do not include root 3, 5, and 7, or acceptable sub. This voicing can be thought of as a hybrid between a guide tone voicing with doubled notes and a spread voicing. So here in figure 3 on page 118, here's an example, A flat 13. I have a doubled melody note an octave below. So this looks this looks a lot like a guide tone voicing with doubled notes. The only difference is that alto voice is actually a tension. So if it was like this, that would be a typical spread voicing. This would be a typical guide tone voicing with doubled notes. So that's like a hybrid spread voicing, and it works the same way here with a 1-3 shell, C7 flat 9. The spread voicings for half diminished chords illustrated in the last figure when we talked about building spread voicings are a bit limited. UST voicings usually work much better and allow for full sounding half diminished voicings with the flat 5 but without a natural 9. As an alternative, spread voicings for half diminished chords can be created by placing flat 5, flat 7, 11 in the right hand over a left hand 1-3 or 1-7 shell. Note that these voicings do not contain the flat 3. The 11 is used instead. So for example here on page 119, figure 4, there's G minor 11 flat 5. Notice how there's no B flat in this voicing. There's no flat 3. Here we have the flat 5, the 11 on top. It could also be played with a 1-3 shell. So this voicing is made famous by Red Garland, who uses it in his introduction to Woody and You, found on Relaxing with the Miles Davis Quintet. You might have heard this. Right? So right now we're going to play through the A section of I Hear a Rhapsody using mostly spread voicings. Add the melody in the top voice. The first 2 bars include the melody and the chords. For the rest of the A section, the chord voicing is illustrated without the melody. So SPR is spread voicing, UST upper structure voicing, upper structure triad voicing, and D2 is a drop 2 voicing. We'll have more on drop 2 voicings in the next video. And also in the bridge, since we're going to play the entire tune, since the melody is sort of low, feel free to use simple open position SOP voicings for the first 4 measures of the bridge. For the last 4 measures of the bridge, spread voicings will work well. Here is I Hear a Rhapsody. Finally, try playing through the following standards with spread voicings, upper structure triad voicings, and simple open position voicings. Everything Happens to Me, Moonlight in Vermont, and It's Easy to Remember. Here's It's Easy to Remember with those 3 voicing strategies. Most of the time, the melody completes the voicing as its top voice, but at times the melody is superimposed on top of a complete voicing. For example, in measure 3, in It's Easy to Remember, there's an F minor chord, F minor 7 chord, the melody note is B flat. So I could simply play that, I could play a spread voicing like this. The top voice of that spread voicing happens to be that B flat. So that's a 5-note spread voicing. Or alternatively, I could play a complete spread voicing for F minor 9 underneath the melody note and then add the melody note on top. If I do that, I'm going to probably have to roll. I'm going to have to play 3 notes in my left hand, and I get that really big, rich 6-note spread voicing. In this case, it's 6 notes. So either this, or I could play this for F minor 7 with the 11 in the melody. So here's It's Easy to Remember using these 3 voicing strategies.
Stay tuned for other YouTube videos highlighting other parts from Introduction to Jazz Piano Deep Dive. Feel free to subscribe below. Thanks so much for joining me, and see you next time.